This is Mark Trexler with the Climatographers, and this is the video version of our Will Climate Warming Impact U.S. Tornadoes. This information is extracted from the Climate Web. If you're not familiar with the Climate Web, I'd urge you to go to the online version of this briefing and check out some of the links to the right of your screen. So the topic of tornadoes and climate change has been around for a long time, and there really are two key issues here. One is, does the data currently suggest that we're seeing a climate signal in the record of tornado activity? And this issue is going to come up again in light of the tornadoes that tore across many or several U.S. states last night. And the other question is, regardless of that question of are we seeing a signal today, are we likely to see such a signal in the future? And that's what we tackle in this briefing. Let me emphasize that whatever the answer to these questions are, this has nothing to do with whether I'm trying to suggest that climate change is less important somehow. It's simply that our conversations around this and other climate change topics ought to be evidence-based. This is one of hundreds of topics you can explore in the Climate Web. And that's why I'm putting together this video and this briefing. So there is literature out there that suggests that there's a relationship, in this case, suggesting a relationship between the amount of time a tornado is on the ground and the width of a tornado, and that's changing over time. There is data out there suggesting that the economic implications of such storms is increasing, but that's a really tricky question, because then you get into the question of, well, are there more houses being built? What's the property value of those houses? Just as with the topic of the economic implications of sea level rise, very tricky to separate out the underlying climate variable and the overlying economic variables. What we do know from the literature, and everybody pretty much agrees on, is that our confidence level in the topic of, for example, severe convective storms is much less in terms of attributing it to climate change than when it comes to most of the other sort of physical climate variables that we commonly talk about. And so we can take that pretty much for granted that the confidence level in this particular topic is relatively low. Now, what's interesting is if you look at sort of all tornadoes 1950 to 2016, and particularly if you look at the bottom left graph there, it looks like there's a clear increase in the overall number of tornadoes. But what's tricky is that when you extract sort of the very low intensity tornadoes, there is no obvious pattern. And what becomes clear is that until relatively recently, we relied on people to sort of report tornadoes. And so more recent, as the years have passed, we have become more and more able to detect more and more low intensity tornadoes, and that has affected the data set. And so that has to be accounted for. Now, it's not just the issue of the number of tornadoes. There's interesting information suggesting that perhaps the variability of tornadoes and the clustering of tornadoes is changing. And on the website, you can go and look at a lot of these reports, which I'll point you to in just a second. But here we can see that the number of days per year with tornadoes seems to perhaps be going down, whereas the days per year with more than 30 tornadoes is going up. So perhaps we're seeing changes in the patterns of tornadoes and the clustering of tornadoes. It's also worth noting that what we'll certainly see here as well, we've seen it in other places, is climate skeptics or climate critics coming out and saying, well, you guys have always argued that there would be stronger and more frequent tornadoes. That's not happening. Therefore, the climate scientists are wrong. And that's pretty misleading, and that's the point that is made here in these couple of paragraphs that we've extracted from the Climate Web. Now, there is more research, quite a bit of research, suggesting that we are likely to see that the conditions for thunderstorms and for tornadoes will improve over time. And so this is the abstract from a paper, 2013 Diffenbaugh paper, suggesting that when you model future climate change, the conditions for tornadoes are likely to improve, even though models cannot forecast individual tornadoes. They're simply too small for that purpose. And here's a graphic demonstrating what an ensemble of models suggests is likely to happen over time. And as you can see, the number of days per season with favorable conditions to these kinds of thunderstorms is projected to increase significantly by 2100. Now, in the brief, you can go and you can actually visit some of the individual sources that we've used, some of the individual news stories that we've used for this story, visit some of the websites, and learn more about the Climate Web. Hope that's useful. Thanks.